So in this video, I want to take a look at this PlayStation 5 controller. I was finally able to get my hands on one. I got this from the local marketplace for 20 euros, excluding shipping. With shipping, it was 27 euros, I think. And as you can see, it's the Midnight Black controller, I think it's called. And yeah, really happy to finally have one of these. The issue with the controller is that one of the buttons is not pressing in. I'm not too sure which button based on the description that was given, so let's go to my PC and test the controller. So now we can see that the controller is plugged in. If I spin around the sticks, you can see that these are actually perfect, which I'm kind of surprised about considering that on Reddit you see a lot of sticks just being completely faulty, but these ones are perfectly centered, which is pretty cool. And if we go to some of the face buttons, these seem to all be working. This is the sharp pad, I think it's called. It's the big middle button is working. Then the triggers are also fully working. At least the right one, the left one I mean, and the right one as well. And so far so good apparently. L3 and R3 working as well. Here we have the D-pad and I think we found the problem. So the upper button is not registering and I'm definitely pressing it. So now I'm pressing the left one, the bottom one, the right one and the up one, and it will not register at all. Even if I press it really hard, it just does not respond at all. And lastly, the PlayStation button is working. And yeah, I think that is our only problem here. So seemingly this is our only issue right here, which based on my experience on working on other PlayStation controllers from every generation before this one, it could be a problem with the Flex PCB, I think. I do not have one of those in stock actually, but I think what we should be doing right now is we should take the controller apart and see if we can find anything obvious. So here we are on the inside of the controller, and it's my first time actually seeing how the inside looks. So I'm just trying to visually inspect it a little bit. And I think the controller actually looks really clean. And what I also tried to show earlier when I was opening up the controller, yeah, I think right here, you can see some scuff marks around the right leg right here, which means that the controller probably has been taken apart before. And if we look at the analog sticks right here, and you look at the difference between, if I bring the controller a little closer, you look at this stick right here and right here, then you know that this stick is stuck. So this is from the factory, and this stick has definitely been replaced or maybe reflowed, since this is clearly leaded solder on here. So definitely someone has been inside the controller before, which is okay, but it maybe is possible that we need to check some connections on here, see if everything has been properly reconnected. Since of course with the Flex PCB, if you do not connect it correctly, then it could also give some issues. So it's just something to keep in mind. But at least so far taking it apart is pretty straightforward. I think it might be a little bit more tricky from here on. It does seem like we have some connections right here, some ribbon cables, which of course are pretty sensitive if you are not careful with them. We need to take out, so I think we actually need to remove this ribbon cable right here. See if I can use some tweezers for that. Or my hand even. Okay, so this just goes out like that. Not sure what this is. I think it might be the microphone. We keep that apart right there. And yes, this has definitely been replaced. I mean, it has been successfully replaced since we saw on the gamepad tester that the stick is working perfectly fine, and I guess the joints are very decent, just hasn't been cleaned up. So I'm just trying to think if you can fix the actual problem with the controller, that maybe we should install Hall effect sticks in here. And I'm just looking at this connector right here, but it seems like something is missing on here. I feel like there should be a tab on here on the upside right here to actually press the ribbon connector down to secure it into place. It seems like that is missing on there, so maybe that has gotten ripped off. I mean, clearly, I think this is for the front button right here, for the share pad, I think it's called, and it clearly is working, so maybe I should not worry too much about that, but it's definitely interesting and something to keep in mind. I will take it out for now, and I think I'm just going to remove the remainder of the ribbon cables as well. I think we now should be free of the ribbon cables. See if I can flip this at least, which I can. And if we look at the controller, there is a little bit of some flux residue on there, which is not touching any of the carbon pads right here, so I do not think it has impacted anything. And if you look at the flex PCB connection right here, it also looks clean. And I just noticed that someone has apparently installed a Hall effect stick right here. So I think this must have had stick drift originally, which means that, yeah, apparently the sticks did not actually last that long. Someone only replaced this stick and then left the original one in here. So I think if he can fix this, then I will definitely also be replacing this stick for a Hall effect stick. Or maybe I will take them both out and replace them with mine Hall effect sticks, which I have. I think first we will need to take the top cover out. I think this should be able to get out right here, which it does. We put that to the side and oh, I think actually we will be putting this to the side and we can flip it, and here is the flex PCB. The first time I take a look at it, it is pretty similar to the PlayStation 4 edition, I think. And if you look at this pad right here, I do not see anything obvious going on. So in terms of any dirt or something that could be on this button pad right here, I do not see any of that. Even if I look at the rest of the flex PCB, it looks pretty clean. I mean, something I can do is I can take my multimeter and I think I will try and take some measurements of resistance on these tracks and see if this one maybe differs from any of the other D-pad directions. And we can also go into continuity mode and maybe check if the signal from these pads actually make it to any of the pads right here. So I have got the multimeter set up and it should be visible on screen, which means that we can go over some of these pads, and I think I should actually be able to go from this side to this side, for example, and we should get a reading. At least I thought it worked like that. I've only done this on the PlayStation 2 controllers because there is a bit of an issue there as well with a certain model where the flex PCB goes faulty and you could measure these pads to see what the resistance was. What I will do instead is go to continuity mode and we can actually just measure the tracks of these, especially this phase. Yes, the rest is working. So I will figure out how this is supposed to go to here. I think this might be one of the first tracks on here. So it might be one of the first ones which we see on here, and I will attempt to measure them. And we can see that we get a connection on the left pad right there. So if I go to the right pad, it might be a little bit more to the middle. A bit of guessing work right there. But we do get a connection right there, which is very interesting. So that means that on here, on the flex PCB, we are getting a connection on either side, which means that the flex PCB is not at fault most likely. So we will need to search it elsewhere. I may take a look at the actual button right here. The button itself did not really feel weird, so I don't think this is physically faulty. Sometimes these black circles right here can actually get ripped off from the rest of the rubber pad, which means that it feels really spongy when you try and press in a button. But here that does not really seem to be the case. It all presses pretty nicely. It feels really responsive to me. If you look at the actual carbon on here, I don't really see anything obvious. Maybe there is a little bit of wear and tear on this one, but I have no idea if this also is from the top D-pad right there, from the top button. So what I can do is just give it a quick clean and reinstall it, and then we connect the controller to the PC again and see if we get a different behavior. I will just go over this with some isopropyl alcohol, just clean all of them while I'm at it. Definitely some residue coming off. It could also be a little of the conductive stuff. Definitely not super dirty. So now we can reinstall this. I don't think there is an orientation to this one. I think that is seated properly. So I will get the motherboard reinstalled. Not sure what needs to be connected for this to work. I know the battery needs to be installed for the controller to actually work, but I will do that and then we will be back on the PC. Alright, so I have put the controller back together enough that we should be able to test it. So I'm plugging it in right now. And yeah, we still clearly do not get anything whatsoever from the top button specifically. The rest of the buttons are all working absolutely fine. So where else can we search this? Since clearly the signal is going to from here to the button to the back, but it kind of makes me wonder if we have some kind of motherboard issue at hand, and maybe it's possible that the original fault of this controller was a faulty stick, so that someone has replaced the new stick and then calibrated it via an online program, but maybe was not considerate enough with putting it back together, which caused maybe something to go wrong on this board and does not work properly anymore. I think we may need to take this board under the microscope and see if there is maybe anything else wrong with this. If there is any components missing or if there's anything obviously wrong with this motherboard. Before I'm going to do that, if we look at this Hall effect stick that has been replaced, I hope it comes across on camera. You can definitely see there is some flux residue around the stick. I'm not sure how that could be connected to a D-pad up button not working, but I do wonder if there is some dirt somewhere which just causes it to not respond properly. I will do a visual inspection. I think I will do it off camera, and if I find anything obviously weird, maybe any missing components, then I will be back with you. Alright, I spent some time doing a bit of a visual inspection on the motherboard, and I have found a few things that are a bit remarkable, I guess. So I think to start, we can start also over here. There's a lot of flux residue on the controller because of the replacement of the analog stick that has been done. I know this looks quite bad, but I tested it with a multimeter and the button is actually working as intended. So this is just a matter of cleaning up, and I think it should be okay. The solid job on the analog sticks, like I said, I mean, it's reasonable enough. The controller is fully working. I would probably clean it up a bit. I think I might actually go ahead and just swap these with my own Hall effect sticks. Especially here, it's maybe a little bit rough, some burnt flux on here. So I will just resolder all of this once we can find the fault. So this is about, this is a connector for the triggers, I think, for the adaptive triggers. And yeah, I found a loose wire right here. I'm not sure what this was intended for, but this was basically just stuck right here due to the flux. It kind of stuck on here. It was not connected to anything. I could basically just pull it out. So this is of course not supposed to be sitting around on the board. I'm not convinced this has caused our issue, but I will of course remove it from the motherboard. And then we have some capacitors right here. If I push on it, it does seem to be soldered properly. So I don't think there's anything wrong there. And again, we definitely need to do a bit of a cleanup on all of these places, since definitely a lot of flux residue even in the battery connector, so that is definitely no good. So we need to give this a very true clean. And now that we are under the microscope, we can see that this definitely something has broken off right here. It looks like broken plastic. It does not impact the functionality of this connector, so I will just leave it as is. Here, there's no work been done, so that is positive. Then if we go over to this side, right here, I maybe should be showing some schematics of this controller. This is BDM30, that's the revision of this controller. But we see there is a solder blob right here. but according to the motherboard pictures I have, this should not be connected like this. It should be separate, so I might try and do that as well. Just keep these completely separate. And I think we can see there has been some work done on here. If we look at some of the solder residue around here, I think this is solder residue. Yeah, so I will need to unbridge this. And I think that is it for this side of the motherboard. And yeah, this is all again just cleaning up. So if we flip the motherboard around and we look at this side, yeah, I actually did not even notice this when I was doing the inspection. I do not think this is supposed to look like this. It kind of looks like some solder has stuck on here. I'm not sure what this is for. I think it might be for the microphone or for maybe for the speaker. Not too sure, but this I don't think this is supposed to be connected like this, and it seems to be shorting out as well on the resistor right there. That is definitely, I don't think it's supposed to look like that. I can verify that, of course, by looking at the motherboard schematic. But it looks a little, it does not look factory to me at all. So I will need to keep that in mind. I will just mark it for myself just in case. But this is probably not how it's supposed to be, and it very well could contribute to the fault we are seeing. It's maybe a miracle that only one button is not working on this controller and the rest is actually fine. I will quickly get the multimeter out. I'm not going to show it on screen. This is in continuity mode, so you will hear a beep if it makes the connection. So this is clearly connected, and it's also connected to this side of the resistor as well as the other side, which I don't think is supposed to happen. If I look at the other connection right there, which has the same components, then it's clearly not connected, I think. I will also quickly measure that as well. Okay, fair enough. I think this is actually supposed to be connected. If I test one side of the resistor, we get a beep. And if I test the other side, we also get a beep. So I think maybe this connection is actually working, but this is not factory, is what I'm going to say. But if it is supposed to be connected on the other side of this connection, then maybe it's also supposed to be connected right here. So I'm not going to mess with that right now. Then we will leave that as is. Then we go to the replacement analog stick, and you can already see we have missing components right here. You can tell that this has been ripped off accidentally, maybe while installing the controller or removing the old analog stick from the controller. And we also we have more flux residue right here and some marks on the board. I think this may have been from prying on the previous installed stick. So a little messy. It is possible that we have a missing component here as well, but not 100% sure about that. It could be unpopulated. I will quickly take a look at the schematic I have here of the controller that you can see right here. And here you can also see on the left underside by side B, you can see that it is supposed to be separated. But I said earlier, so we will need to unbridge that. If we go and look at the other side of the controller over here, then yeah, we see where the flex PCB is connected that this is supposed to be unpopulated. And we can also see if you look at the left analog stick, they are supposed to be two small capacitors sitting next to the analog stick, and those are not present on our controller. And while we are here, if we go and look at what I think is for the microphone connection with the golden pins in the middle, we see that it's definitely not supposed to be like that and has definitely been damaged at some point. I think the actual connection might be okay, so maybe the functionality has not been impacted, but it has definitely been damaged. I mean, luckily I'm just going to try and fix this controller for myself. I don't actually have a PlayStation 5 controller, and I would like one for my PC to play some video games. So I don't mind if the functionality of the microphone does not work or if the speaker does not work. It's not really something I'm going to use anyway. I'm just interested in trying to get the controller to work again. I think the best thing for me to do right now, I mean, maybe the first thing I will do is unbridge this connection right here on the upper left side. So I will try to unbridge this and see if this somehow works. That would be great if that could fix the issue. I'm not even sure what the functionality is of this bridge. Clearly it's not really impacting the controller that much. It's always just better to remove these things if they are not supposed to be there, of course. So I will get a little bit of flux and no solder wick or anything. I will just attempt to get the solder to stick to my iron and see if I can remove it that way. I think like that is actually perfect. I think this should be good enough to plug in the controller again into the PC and see if we get any type of different behavior from the controller. Okay, so we are back on the PC scene and I just testing the buttons and unfortunately we still have no dice. The top button is still not working. So I think next up I might need to give this controller a very good clean and see if maybe that can resolve something. Since unfortunately this is not really working, but we saw there was a lot of dirt on the controller, a lot of flux residue. So I think I will just actually give it a full clean and then we will see if that gives us a different solution. It's unfortunately a bit of a trial and error, especially since I do not really have any experience with the PlayStation 5 controllers. So I will just try and clean everything and see if that gives us a result. Alright, so we are back. I did do the cleaning up of the whole motherboard. I basically used some clean room wipes for that, which are these nice little wipes that look like the ones that you use for your glasses, but it's really handy, very sturdy, it does not leave any residue behind. And in combination with the toothbrush, it was very easy to actually clean the motherboard. I already have it reinstalled for testing, but yeah, you can see it looks pretty immaculate. So I think I will plug in the battery and then we can connect it to the PC and actually give it a test and see if a simple cleanup was sufficient to get this controller working. Here we are on the gamepad tester and I will just go straight ahead to the D-pad, test the other ones, and there we go. We actually got the D-pad working again. So I wonder if any of the flux residue, since it was also seeping into the connectors for the battery as well as for the triggers, if that somehow shorted out the upper D-pad position. I'm not too sure how it would have done that, but yeah, there was definitely a lot of flux on the motherboard, so it could have been interfering with that. I can definitely see that. But clearly we have resolved and we have a fully responsive controller. I will quickly go over the other buttons and see if all of them are still working as well. I do not have all of them installed, by the way. So the PlayStation button should work. The microphone is not installed, but I think I'm accidentally pushing the trigger. But yeah, I think everything is working. I cannot test L1 and L2 since I do not have the actual buttons installed, but I mean, I have faith that this controller is still as functional as before we opened it up, so that is amazing news. So for me, the question now is if I want to take it further with this controller and actually remove both these sticks and replace them with Hall effect sticks and just recalibrate them. I think it could be a pretty good option. So yeah, I think maybe we could actually replace both of these analog sticks. I mean, the solid job is not perfect, of course. You cannot see it. But yeah, the solid job is not perfect. I mean, so I would definitely redo this anyway. So I think I will set up my soldering station and then we can replace them, the analog sticks. Or maybe since this Hall effect stick is fine, I will just touch up. I need to actually learn to keep this in frame. Since this Hall effect stick is actually fully functional, I think maybe I will just touch up these solder joints instead and just replace this stick with a similar Jin Hall effect stick. I just need to make sure that these are the same revision. I mean, I'm not sure if that actually impacts anything negatively, but it might be a good idea if these are as similar as possible. So has a 2 on there, and I do not have any numbering on here actually. That is very interesting. I will grab another one and see if I have any that have a number on here. It does not seem to be that way. But even if you look at it from this side, it seems like the stick is a little bit skewed. So I think actually I will just remove this altogether. If you look at it from the side, you can see that it is Yeah, it's a little bit more upwards here than here, so it doesn't really impact the functionality of the controller. But yeah, then I think I have a good reason to just take them out. So then I think instead I will just put these case silver ones in here since I bought these months ago and just give them a try and see how these ones perform. And then we will be removing both of these Hall effect sticks or analog sticks, I mean. So I will get my soldering thing set up and yeah, let's remove them. Alright, so I have the iron being set up right here. I have the temperature at 360 Celsius. And since it is a pretty big tip, see if I can get it in focus. I reviewed this months ago also. It's a really amazing soldering iron tip for removing these type of analog sticks. But yeah, I guess the downside, not really, is that it can take a bit of a good minute for the iron to actually heat up. So I need to have a little bit of patience. And yeah, in the meantime, I will get some flux on the motherboard to make it a little bit easier to get this iron, to get the sticks out of the motherboard. And I will also get a little bit of solder to actually put into the soldering iron tip, since that can actually help with removing the analog stick. So of course we are working with leaded solder right here. So it is actually on temperature as of now. So especially on the ground holes, we can dump some iron, some solder in there, and that should nicely melt. Definitely important that you use a fume extractor when working with this iron, since there will be a lot of smoke coming from the iron tip, since of course we are dumping a lot of solder in here, so there's a lot of smoke coming free with that as well. Now we should be able to actually remove the analog stick. I will need to move the controller backwards a little bit, since I need to put this on straight. So that is one analog stick out. It's a little bit awkward with the filming. I maybe should have put my phone on the side a little bit. This side should be easier considering that there is already leaded solder on here. Yeah, this came out instantly. So now both the analog sticks are removed, so I will need to give this a bit of a cleanup, and then I should prep it to go ahead and install the new analog sticks. So that was quite a tedious process, but in the end we got there, and here is the motherboard without the analog sticks. And you can see on the side where the Hall effect sticks were installed, there is indeed some evidence of prying around the stick. I have looked at the traces and I don't think that they are broken, although they look definitely, yeah, they look quite damaged. But what I can do, I will quickly take this under the microscope, and I think we can just give it a quick test and see. We can at least confirm, just to be sure that everything is fine. So here is the damage we just looked at under the phone camera. My multimeter is in continuity mode. This time you should be able to see it on the screen, and we are just going to measure these two traces, which are going right here. I think first thing I will do is check if it connects to ground, which would be bad if it does. This trace does not. This trace also is not connected to ground, so that is the positive news. And here you can see one of the traces where it connects, so I will put my multimeter there, and then we can check it to the other side. I think I need to remove a little bit of the coating, since the copper is not exposed enough, so I will need to expose it a little bit on both sides. So I expose a little bit right here, as well as on the other side right here. I think that should be good enough to know if the trace is okay. I know it's completely out of focus, but the trace is working as intended, so that is positive. I cannot tell where the other trace is going, but at least I can find it from the other side. So is the trace above here? You need to expose that a little bit. That should be plenty. Then I will expose a little bit above where it is exposed, since this trace, it kind of goes under here, and I cannot really spot it after that. But since the other side of the trace is not affected, I will just go ahead and scrape a little bit away right here. So we have a little bit of copper inside. And then I will also check it from there. From right here to right here. And we do also have continuity right there. So at least the positive news is that the tracers are fine, even if they look absolutely horrific. I think the best thing to do is to just put solder mask over everything, just to ensure that we do not have any issues with the exposed copper in the future. So I will quickly do that and then we can go ahead and install these sticks. Alright, so we are back and we can see I just put some solder mask over all the exposed points. These are the replacement sticks, these case silver analog sticks. A little bit mixed on them. I've tried them in PlayStation 4 controller, I think, and an Xbox One controller. And I think I prefer the Ginful stick so far, but maybe it's different on the PlayStation. So that is one stick so far installed. Here we can see that the stick is straightened fully. Yeah, I think this is fully straight with the board, so it's not misaligned or anything, which now the both sit pretty nicely. Maybe it looks like the board is maybe a little bit screwed. Not surprising given the heat cycles it has had. I don't think it will have any negative consequences. But I think the stick looks pretty decent, so we can go ahead and install it. Just put some flux around here. It's not mandatory at this point. You can definitely get away with just the solder, but I just want to get some nice joints, so just put a little bit of flux down. Then we just grab our soldering iron, again at 360 Celsius. Put some solder on the iron, and first thing I do is just try and get the ground point soldered, since that way we can assure that the stick will stay in place and it's not going to fall out. Need to wait until the solder is solidified. Then I will also do these ones for the L3 R3 buttons. I think that should be enough actually, so now we can go ahead and install the rest of the sticks of the legs of the analog stick. So that is one stick done. Just quickly try and clean up most of the flux which is on the board. Actually go ahead and use one of these clean room wipes actually. A little easier to use. And now we will do the same thing on the other side. So here are the replacement Halvex sticks we installed. We did a good job of keeping the analog stick straight with the board, so I think it looks better than the previous installment of the sticks that was on this board. So happy with the result. Here are the solder joints, all leaded solder. That's all cleaned up quite nicely, I think. And yeah, I think we should just put it back together at this point, since the controller should be fully working. Of course, the analog sticks were never really faulty, but I actually like the Holodeck sticks. Yeah, of course, since there were two different type of analog sticks in there, and the installment was not really up to my standards, I guess. Although working, I thought, well, if we're going to redo it, we might as well install some Holodeck sticks. Or I would just put it together right now, and then we can go ahead and test it on the gamepad tester. So I've put the controller fully back together, and I think it's time to check it on the PC. So we are on the gamepad tester, and we can see that the controller is a little bit drifty. But remember, these are two fully new sticks, so I think they're actually within reasonable range. So just a quick calibration should actually take care of that. But we can see that all the buttons are fully working. The top buttons are working. The other face buttons are fully working. And we have absolutely no issue with any of the buttons whatsoever. So I will quickly go over to this site right here, DualShockTools.github, which is a amazing site which you can use on your browser. In this case, I am on Chrome, and we should be able to calibrate this controller with these new sticks. So we can see that the production date of this controller should be July 4th, 2025, which is not even a year ago. So given the fact that one stick was replaced, it's kind of shocking that these sticks apparently failed within 1 year. That is definitely pretty insane to think about. For the sticks to just die seems to be a very common issue in the PlayStation 5, even worse than in the PlayStation 4 controller. So yeah, unfortunately, the quality of the sticks has not really gone better over the generations. But let's try and fix the sticks, and we will start with the stick center. So the stick center is now calibrated, so we can see that they should both be straight, but it's only really the right stick that is fully straight. This one, the left stick, has a bit of a issue. So this was very zoomed in, so that's why it looks this strange. But if you look at it normally, it does seem to be fine. A little jittery, but I think it should be okay. I thought we were having some faults with the stick, but that does not seem to be the case right here. So let's move on to the stick range calibration. Okay, so that has been done. So these sticks are calibrated. You can see that on the right stick it's not perfect, but it should be good enough, to be fair, to be able to play video games. I don't really play anything intense, so I think this should be fine. I'm curious what this is about. Okay, so here we can actually fine tune the calibration. I don't even think the right stick is necessary. So let's save this to the controller, and we can do a quick test of the controller in general. It's basically a little checklist. So I know you can see it, but I am wiggling the cable in the USB port, but it's very solid, so I will pass that. Now we can quickly go over all the buttons, and we see that we do not have any issues here. So that has passed. This is the resistance on the adaptive triggers, which I definitely feel, so I will pass that. These are the haptic vibrations. So these are the vibrations for the triggers, and you basically get 2 passes of the rumble, which are working. So I will also pass that. The lights on my controller I will also pass, since I'm on my computer and I have a program for the lights on my computer, and the controller is interfering with that, so it's not going to work perfectly. So I will need to pass, so that's why I passed that. So we do not get a sound from the speaker, and that is definitely because the speaker was damaged, or at least one of the legs was damaged. So I will need to fill that, since I don't hear anything. I cannot actually test this right now, so I will just pass it for the sake of it. Okay, so we should be able to test the microphone on here. So fortunately the microphone is not picking up, which makes me think that I failed to reinstall the cable for that properly. So I think I installed the correct orientation, but I did not push it down enough, so I will need to fill this. So conclusion is that everything is working except for the speaker, because we saw that the connection has been damaged on the motherboard. The microphone is very likely not working because I did not reinstall the microphone correctly. But the conclusion is that this controller is definitely ready to be used, and which is amazing. That's what I wanted with this controller. So that marks the end of this video, where the end result is a working PlayStation 5 controller, but just with a busted speaker. The microphone I will fix off camera. So that is the conclusion, and yeah, I want to thank you for watching. I hope this was valuable. If you have a similar issue to this, if you enjoyed this video, you can give a like on the video, maybe subscribe to the channel, and yeah, I hope to see you in the next video. Have a good day.